You good to go, sir?
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
What is there not to be pretty much about?
No, nothing. We're good.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to, I'm not sure what episode of Geek First Podcast, because we've done so many. I know the Shazam review came out, but that was recorded weeks ago, so it's some episode in the 200s. I'll know next week, because next week's the episode 9 trailer dropping. That's a big one. I am... Oh, boy, I've not thought of a good nickname. I am the... I'm the dog lover, Travis Snail. You know?
Oh, no. I am the Afterlife, Tyler Briggs.
Oh, there you go. So, ladies and gentlemen, best thing to do is just subscribe, because this month we got a whole bunch of stuff dropping. Like I said, Shazam spoilers dropped last... well, I guess at this time we're recording a couple days ago. Got the Us review, which is now our third biggest episode. It's
That's
climbing.
wild.
Yeah. It's for SoundCloud. It's I think it's in like the 4,000s. It's like a 3,000 away or 3,000. It's about 300 away from passing Last Jedi.
Wow.
I'm wondering if it's gonna do it, which is very strange. But
That's really interesting because I wouldn't put those two movies in like the same league at all.
I think it's just like it's a theory movie.
Probably very controversial. Like
Yeah.
a lot of interesting things to discuss, which is why I imagine people are just checking out podcasts in general. So
yeah, and I feel like if you see it, and maybe if you haven't had friends that see it, you want to hear other people talk about and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised that's jumped to our third. So go make that our second. But the biggest thing you can do to support us is if you could obviously subscribe. We got lots of stuff dropping in the next few months. Endgame's only a few weeks away, which is crazy to think about. But please give us a review. That's our goal. We're trying to hit 200 reviews on iTunes. So right now we got a long ways to go. So if you could help us out a lot, throw us a 5-star. If not a 5-star, let us know why. But if you could throw down the review, and a written one would help us out a lot, big time. As you can see with the new gear, sound, audio, everything like that. You guys make a difference. So hopefully you can help us with that. This is a review for Pet Sematary. We will do a non-spoilers, and then we'll do a spoilers, and we'll give you the 3, 2, 1 countdown. Briggs, I'm going to throw it to you to start with. What do you think about this movie?
It was an interesting. I was thinking about it a lot the last 2 days here, and I went really back and forth on how much I enjoyed it, because when I first sat down, I really enjoyed the movie. It was a really good start, and it introduced a lot of really interesting things that I was excited to see later on in the movie as more things get revealed and whatnot through the plot. But I think for me, it kind of started falling apart. I'm not really sure when, but it started falling apart a little bit later on in the movie. And then in hindsight, looking back at it, I remember when I first came out, I still thought it was a pretty good movie. But looking back on it, now I'm thinking... It gets a little bit more disappointing every time I think about it, I think.
That's not a good thing for...
Not a good thing at all. So I would say overall, like it just doesn't quite hit that bar as far as being like a more of a thriller sort of intriguing movie, and it also doesn't quite hit that bar of being like a scary sort of horror movie. And I think it tried to do a little too much of both, and it just sort of ended up falling short of both as well. The biggest issue that I had was that whatever it is kind of driving the plot along, just it doesn't really feel like it's relevant, I guess, in a way. It feels like the plot is just going along for the sake of moving the plot along. It doesn't feel like what the characters are doing, any of the characters really, is what's driving the plot. It doesn't feel like the characters, they're just sort of like these puppets in a play that just kind of has to go this way no matter what they do.
Yeah, I see what you mean, because I think one of my problems is I think the pacing is a little off, and I feel like meeting characters and development stories happens quite quick for a movie that I feel at times is really slow paced, which that's not even a bad thing, but there's just time where it does take its time a lot. But it feels like some of the big stuff that happens really quickly, and it's just like, oh, this is happening. Like, it's just, we'll get to it, but there's just certain situations where a character be like, why are we doing this? And he's just like, okay, we're doing this. Like, okay.
I think
like, we'll talk about in spoilers, but I think I kind of feel similar to the way you're talking about it as far as that critique. So.
Yeah, it has a nice start and nice like slow burn sort of thing going on, and then but then it never really amounts to anything. The final reveals, and then once things sort of get really going in motion, it just feels very lackluster. And I think the biggest thing for me was the movie was an hour 40. It's not too short, but for a lot of like movies these days, it is on the shorter end. And so I think they introduced a lot of really interesting things that could have been elaborated upon, and then they just sort of left it at how they introduced it. They didn't really, it didn't feel like it was very impactful to the overall story, but it felt like they spent too much time being like, this is a thing, and then they just left it and didn't really come back to it. So overall, it was a decent start, but it really fell flat for me.
Would you recommend it, or if you wouldn't, or if you would you recommend it? If you did, who would you recommend it to?
I don't think I can recommend this movie.
There you go.
I think like if you're looking for a thriller sort of thing with like some horror aspects, there's a lot better options out there. And then if you're looking for a jump scare, kind of like more cheesy, just classic horror film, again, there's better movies out there.
Yeah, like I didn't love it like everyone else, but I feel like I would recommend if you could only see one or the other, I'd say probably go see Us if you had a choice.
Definitely.
Yeah, like I know you and I both had problems with it, but I think you and I from just a filmmaking standpoint have a lot more to appreciate with that one.
Yeah.
I feel like that one too does check that box of being that kind of good time, fun horror thriller.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's a lot to enjoy with Us, even if it isn't like overall as like a cinematic experience in a way, even though it like there are some flaws that I pointed out. If you check out our Us review, you can hear about those.
Third biggest episode.
Yeah.
Pimp that out again like we need to.
Yeah, like there are some things that I felt it fell short on, but overall, like there's a lot to look back, a lot to talk about, a lot to think about, and a lot of really interesting things they did with that film that make it worth at least going to see. Whereas this one, I don't think it's something where there's really much to really discuss if you like go get together with your friends after and whatnot, or if it's like, oh, like how could this have gone differently? It seems like everything just happened, and then it's like, well, this is how things are.
Especially because they throw out a lot of themes in this, right? Of like I won't spoil anything, but you probably from trailers can tell just like it has some themes to do with death and life and things like that, and like kind of questions, and some of the main characters talk to each other about the idea of life and death, and I think that's the most they kind of just talk about it, but it's just to set up this like great mystery of what's in the woods and stuff like that. So you done with yours?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of the original. It's a film that it is very dated and it's not the best acted, but it's a film that I've loved for years. So with this one, I was very excited. I saw the trailers. One, I want to make one mention. The second trailer, I won't say what they do because it's non-spoilers. I just have to say one of the worst trailers ever because they spoiled the twist, and then they spoiled the twist that they changed for the book people. I just want to throw that out because we never talked about a newscast, and I was very mad about that. So that's one. With this film, I was looking very forward to it, and I was quite disappointed in it. I'm not having a good year with Us, and then I can't remember what else I saw recently, but I'm hoping the rest of 2019 gets a little bit better. But this film, for me, it's kind of like what Briggs was talking about. I felt like for me it was kind of, I really like kind of the first, I'd say the first act, and then it just kind of, I didn't know what they were going for, if they wanted the highbrow, kind of hereditary witch sort of horror feel, where it's very in-depth with characters and it's trying to get into the psyche of people, or if they wanted a kind of almost like have a good time, get scared at the movie theater sort of deal. So for me, it was kind of a mishmash of a film. Acting was really strong, and for me, as two things from I guess one reason why I probably like this, another reason is, like I said, the filmmaking aspect, not ass point. I don't know what the ass point is, but the aspect of, like I said, I didn't know what it wanted to be. I think the pacing was off. The ending to me was very messy, and there's still some good things we'll talk about in spoilers. Like I said, acting. There's sometimes the score is really good, but that wasn't all the way through. There's some cool cinematography. But then the other thing for me is just, as a purist, I really like that original, and I get you do have to make some changes with a new adaptation, or you don't have to, but if you want to stand out and get a new audience, I just necessarily didn't really like many of those changes. That's just the way it's going to go. I don't even think some of them are awful. It's just I was not a fan of them. They didn't work for me, and I think some of them were not that flushed out, and I feel like there's just certain people, almost like what Briggs was talking about, there's just certain things that happen, and I won't say who it is, but there's one point where these people just start having dinner together, and like this is the first time they're meeting, and we get no setup of like, why is this person over for dinner, this and that, and it's just like, it just happens just because it's like, oh, this is a guy that's going to be important for the rest of the movie, and it threw me off, especially because in the original and especially in the book, they have like this like kind of friendship, and it's strange. So for me, the purist side, I didn't like a lot of the changes, and then from even just the film alone, I feel it's kind of messy. I don't think it's one of these, like, I would not put it when we get to Golden Geese like one of the worst films of the year or anything like that. Like, it wasn't that where I left like, oh, so I was just like, I feel like it had a good foundation, and it just kind of slowly crumbled as the movie went along. And I feel I don't know. It didn't leave me with any. It wasn't like I wasn't thinking about it after I left the theater. Other than like, oh, I saw this movie, is a little disappointing, but I wasn't thinking about it. Where the original I saw, I was very haunted, and there's some great imagery in there. This one, I was just kind of like, okay, that was that, and I'm excited for It Chapter 2 later on this year for Stephen King. And I think I'm the same. I think I would only recommend it to people if you're like a major horror buff and you like everything horror, then sure. Or if you like Stephen King sort of stuff. I'm not saying you would necessarily like this movie, but if you like his stuff, you want to see adaptation. But this isn't anything that I'd be telling my mom or sister, like, you got to run out and see it. Like, because Emily was the same thing. She didn't see it with us, and she's like, oh, do I need to see it? I'm like, I think you can wait for when it comes on Netflix or something. Like, we don't need to go in the theater to see this again, because I don't think it's, I don't think there's anything, like I said, there's nothing awful, but there's nothing, I think, great about it either. So it's just kind of somewhere like wandering in the middle of a type of film. So
yeah. I just want to put this to rest. After the movie, I thought it was Joel Edgerton the entire time, but it was actually Jason Clarke.
Mm-hmm.
And I just looked at some photos of the two together, and I definitely see how they don't look that similar.
Yeah, you were saying that because when we walked out, you're like, oh, Joel Edgerton. I'm like, oh, wait a second. But the only thing I don't know, you'd have to pull up pictures. Did you get ones of them with beards?
No,
that's the only time maybe they look similar when they have a beard.
I think they have like. It's similar enough that if they both had beards, you can see it. But I think I just hadn't seen Joel Edgerton in a while, so
that's funny. Yeah. Anything non-spoilers you want to add before we get into spoilers?
No, not a whole lot. I mean, I would just say, like, honestly, it wasn't that scary overall. Yeah. I think they used some jump scares a little too liberally earlier on, and then that just kind of. It just kind of lessened the impact of a lot of the I would assume would be more scarier moments later. It just kind of made those feel a bit cheaper. And
for me, the jump scares are not even the one where it's just scares. It's just like the music's just really loud and something really loud happens. It's something where like a movie like Hereditary, which is not very jump scary movie. It has those in there, but to me, it hits the moment, or it's placed right, or when the jump scare that happens, to me, it's something actual scary.
Yeah.
But this is like, this kind of suffers from that. Like, it's not as egregious as some other movies, but when it's like, let's make something that's not that scary, just really loud, and it's like, okay. And there is times where it's like something awful's happening and it's loud, but those are my least favorite. That's one of the reasons I don't think it's a perfect movie. That's why I loved Hereditary. There was so much stuff that was in the background or being scary, and I was scared because the imagery, and not just because the speakers got raised really loud and I'm gonna jump no matter what, because it's like you're gonna
you just can't not like get spooked by it.
And it's not even like I said, it's not like a feeling of being scared. It's just like if you're sleeping and someone just comes to you and yells in your ear, you're gonna wake up very violently.
It's just like sudden images and sudden noises. You're gonna jump from that no matter what.
Yeah. So 3, 2, 1. Let's talk about some of these sudden jumps and images. Where do you want to start this? Because for you, this was the first time you had seen like anything Pet Sematary related. So I guess I wanted to start here because this was my first question I asked Breaks. You did feel that they kind of laid on pretty thick that like someone was dying from that road.
Yeah. No, right away. Like as soon as I get to the house, instantly she's like, bam, loud noise. Cut to a semi truck flying down this old forest road, and it's like. Yeah, that's like, it's pretty obvious at the start, and then they laid on a little bit later too, and it's like.
Do you think if they only would have done that once though, that you might have chalked up to like, oh, it's just a jump scare that they wanted to do, and like let's say, because that's one of my problems was as someone that's a big fan of the originals, that they just show the truck and Lewis has a dream of the truck, and I don't know why I'm starting here, but I guess just to talk about like the kid passing and everything like that. Yeah. I just felt that was kind of the movie in a nutshell, where it handled things well and like I said, was acted well, but that's where it's like, okay, you're gonna show this truck and foreshadow, but then it wasn't a foreshadow to me. It just felt like it was telling you like someone's gonna die from this truck, and it's just like, okay, I felt like it was sometimes assuming too much that people had seen the original, read the book. Where I think you shouldn't do that in movies like this, especially the last one came out 30 years ago. It's an old movie, so there's a big audience of people. I know more people that haven't seen it that have seen it. So for me, when I was watching the movie, I was getting quite frustrated. They just kept laying it on and just laying it on. And I had enough of it.
Yeah. Does the cat originally die from the truck as well?
Yeah, it does. Okay. Yeah, and they find it, and it's just kind of same thing. Judd and him like, oh, look what happens, blah blah. Like, what are we gonna do? And Judd has the same sort of idea. What did you feel about Judd as a character? Because I wanted to get your impression as someone that's not seen anything else.
Things happen too fast with him for sure.
Yeah.
I think it was really curious that it starts off with him sort of being a little bit creepy when he first meets Ellie in the forest, and is like, get down from there. And then he obviously shows he's pretty nice by helping her, but it's kind of in a bit of a creepy way.
Yeah.
And then you see the mom come in, and she's like pretty skeptical and kind of nervous around him. And then immediately the next time you see him, he's there for dinner.
Yeah.
They're hanging out, and it's like, there's no development or like progression at all with that. All of a sudden they're all buddy, and then he's at like the daughter's birthday, and then like I can even just like I didn't think it was too bad with him being like, oh, like when he found the cat for them and whatnot. That wasn't even like that was like kind of like the creepy kind of strange, which I wouldn't mind if they kept that way with the character,
because he knows something is wrong, right? So it's like, okay, he can act creepy, but that's one thing. Before you continue, for me it was weird with that character. I felt like, okay, he did it start with the classic like, oh, can we trust this creepy neighbor, and then he was like really nice and friendly. But I felt like throughout the movie he kept going back and forth between nice and friendly and then being creepy. And like I said, other than when they buried Church, I'm fine with that. But then the rest of the movie, there's times where he's just like, he's acting like he is in on it, or he's like on purpose set this family up, and then that's not the case. Like he's like, it was very strange. I felt like they had shot the scenes differently, like play it nice, play good, and we're like, I didn't understand it. He doesn't have he has a big impact on the story, but not in the sense of like he gets taken out and disposed pretty easily. He's just kind of there to be like, things are going bad, right?
Yeah, and then I think another big thing is then at the end when Ellie kills him, it just shows that like, oh, his wife was also buried or something out there, and like,
well, I don't think that's the case.
What even do you know what happened with that?
Because what happens is, because it's strange, because in the OG movie she's not in it. In the book, what happens is, so in the book actually takes place, it's a whole year's worth in Pet Sematary, where this movie legitimately feels like it's 2 to 3 weeks. It's so, and like they show Halloween, but like just the pacing of it's just so quick. But so what happens is in the book, they approach them and they're there for a year. He does have his wife, and she is sick and she passes away, and and that's how he kind of bonds with his family, because they kind of take him in and help him out while his family passed, or while his wife passed. With her appearing at the end, I think that's just supposed to be, it's kind of like The Shining, where it can kind of take some of your fears or something like that, where it's something your fear or use something against you. So it's not like he buried it up there. It's just that this place knows like what could hurt you, right? And even then, I don't think it's a strange choice, because they didn't need it, because he still just gets killed right away.
There was pretty much no mention of her in any significant way earlier in the film, so it's just like
there's only one.
Really
like, who's that? That was my wife Norma, and that's about it. We never hear about her, why she passed, anything like that. It's just that was my wife, you know. Okay.
Yeah, and as someone who hasn't seen any of the source material, I thought it was implying that he buried her initially, and he was like hiding that was his like secret, but they never hinted at him having a secret or really being that like.
But he plays it like he has a secret, which is weird. Like, I don't know if that was an acting choice, directing choice, but he plays it like there's gonna be some reveal. Like I said, that he's bad, and there's not really, because it's strange that I feel like he is creepy, and then once he kind of is starting to put when oh god, what's her name, Rachel, when she calls him, it's like, oh, Luce isn't picking up his phone, everything like that. To me, he assumes like the audience role of being the good guy and like, what have you done, stuff like he's investigating Lewis. So it's strange for me what they do with this character, and it sucks because I really like John Lithgow as an actor. I just felt like I couldn't get a read on him, and I couldn't and like it's, and we brought that up, but it's just like Lewis and him don't even meet before they have dinner. We don't even get a scene of why do they invite this man into their home for dinner. It's just because because Ellie's friends with him. Okay, because like you said at the beginning, it seemed like the mom was a little skeptical of him. So there's not even a scene. Like, even a scene of her and Lewis talking, like, oh, I don't know about this guy. And Lewis being like, you know what? He's an old guy on his own. I'm sure he's fine. Like, let's get to know him. Like, he just appears. He's just in this home, and it's very strange. So, yeah, I was really disappointed. I love Judd in the original. He's just like, all he is now, and he's just straight a warm-hearted guy who is really nice. And even then, because the crux of this is supposed to be that the reason he does this is because, you know, he feels bad for his family and he doesn't want the girl to lose his cat. But even then, like, him and Ellie have scenes together, but I didn't feel like there was enough scenes for him to justify putting this cat up there when he knows what happened. Where for me, when like I said, I'll refer back to it, but in the original, there's a lot more time spent with him and this girl and him and this family. So you kind of get like, okay, he made a mistake. And in the book, he does it because they helped him with his passing wife. So I felt like in this, the reasoning for him putting the cap there, because the way they either wrote Judd or the way Lithgow played him, to me didn't match up for him deciding to put the cat up there, knowing what could happen, right? So
yeah, it is a lot of I think with his character and kind of overall with the movie in general, they didn't have a lot of nuance for a lot of like the reasoning behind things happening. They just kind of happened like as and they also didn't as you said earlier, it didn't feel like there was much time passing at all. They would just like they wouldn't show in any way that time has passed. They would just cut to another day, or they would just cut to another scene with these characters all buddy now. And
because when they cut to it being Halloween, we have no context of when it is.
Yeah,
that just means it's in October.
Yeah, because like as far as I was concerned, they showed up on like the day before Halloween, and then it's literally just the next day, and then her birthday's the day after
and she
Halloween.
has all these friends that we've never met and don't know. Like it's very quick.
Yeah, so it there's not a lot of just like progression as far as like just the whole setting and everything. It just feels like, looking back on it now, it feels like they just had like, these are all the moments from the source material we need to hit.
Yeah.
And there's like cutting from one to the next, and there's not really any development in the characters or the setting itself as to how they're getting there. They're just getting there.
Well, that's the thing you brought, because I didn't look at the runtime. I didn't know it was hour 45. I feel like this is a movie that, and I still would want things to be better, but it did feel like it's something that maybe needed more time. Like we always talk about like how it is sometimes nice to be short, but like you look at something, it is a completely wrong comparison, but you look at something like Endgame, when we hear it's 3 hours, we go, oh, that makes sense, because we feel like it needs that, right? With this, I'm not saying it need to be 3 hours, but even 2 hours or like a 2:05 or something, like it feels like, and I don't know, maybe there isn't scenes or whatnot, but it feels like there should be a lot more somewhere, and it just it isn't, you know. So what do you want to go next in this?
I kind of want to just one thing actually before I forget. I wanted it was rated R, right?
Yeah,
it was very very interesting choices to some degree in that there were some times where it was like very very much like, okay, this is rated R, and then they went really light on some other stuff too. Like for example, I guess the two biggest things that I would show is at the very start, when the boy dies, he gets hit by a car at the in the parking lot. That Lewis treats. That's like
Pascal is his name.
That's like really like his arms like his bones showing out his arm. He's all gruesome. Like you can see inside half of his head. Like that's pretty messed up. And then it's very gratuitous with that. And then and then I guess on the lightest end is when Ellie gets hit by the truck. You don't even see her body. You just see like the colors of her clothes kind of in the grass, but it never actually shows a clear shot of her.
Well, and it was strange even because you get like a few seconds of, and like this sounds more, but he like kind of picks up her head to like hold her, but like it just looks like
it's all in one piece. And also I guess now that I think about it, she has like the stitches in the head, which is real later, but you know, it doesn't look like the head's like oozing blood or anything.
Yeah.
So.
And maybe they just chose that because maybe with child violence, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that goes. Well, even then though.
But the thing is with it's like that they don't hold back with that. So
I just thought about, because I was wondering maybe if it got them like an NC-17 where it's like you have to be, but like you said with it, you see like Georgie's arm get bitten off, and like there's some gruesome stuff there. So
they literally just break a child's arm.
Yeah.
And he's like, and it's not like a quick like cut away from it. It's like there on screen for a long time.
No, I'm glad you brought that, because I want to bring up one thing before you go, because I'm somebody that is a huge fan of Zelda, Rachel's sister. It is because I was a kid that watched many scary things. I watched Goosebumps, and I was not scared of anything. Zelda in the original scared me and gave me nightmares. For me, as somebody that's a huge fan, I was waiting, especially because in this movie they build her up a lot, and she's even in the OG. Rachel doesn't have these things where she's like here's in the walls, stuff like that. She just kind of has memories of her. So they were making a big deal about her. So I was really excited, but I felt like the way they shot her was PG-13, because there's lots of just quick cuts of her, and you see her back kind of contorted. But I felt like it feels like a lower budget horror movie when you never get like a full shot of the monster. That's what it felt like with her, where you just never fully see her. You never fully get that reveal. And if it was PG-13, I'd go, okay, I understand. But with it being rated R, and I think they're trying to do that to build up, you know, her mystique, but I don't think it did that. I think that was something that needed more of it, and that's some of my bias of the original, because the original you see her back, and it's really weird because it's Talon Briggs. It's played by a really skinny dude, so it's just like there's all these levels of weirdness going on. But with this, and I also did not like, from a change, I did not like her death in the original, the book and the movie. She just chokes to death. To me, that's a lot more believable. Yeah, I felt like they just added this trolley thing just to fit in a jump scare, because they used that jump scare about 3 times of, you know, that the trolley one, and there's that one where the mirror turns in the trolley and she turns that, and you know, every time she's just gonna drop down and like it's scary, right? There's no originality to it. There's nothing. It's just and I think they use it one more time when Rachel's like when she's like kind of coming up.
No, she's in bed and then she's like starting to crawl out of like a closet or something.
Yeah, and it's strange to me that I felt like they took this idea, which for me was one of the most haunting things original, and it just became a jump scare, and that was a PG-13 moment where it was strange that I wanted to see that used more, you know, and they show that actors sometimes are face, but I was very disappointed in that from a fan perspective. So yeah,
and then on top of was Zelda there for me at least. Having no context of the characters beforehand, I felt like it wasn't really necessary at all in the film, even because it really Rachel, the mother, right? That's her name, yeah. She didn't feel like she had a lot of development or even a lot of time as a character in the movie. So to have this whole sort of supernatural kind of like weird flashbacky kind of horror aspect that felt like it was kind of constantly within the film, it was kind of it was brought up pretty early on, and then every once in a while they'd always like go back to it just to like keep us let us know that like she's kind of tormented by her past to some degree. But usually you use that in a way that would allow you to develop the character. This is why she is how she is now. But it never feels like she goes through any stages of development in the film, and then the only reason, and then there's no really conclusion with her and Zelda either.
No,
it feels like at the very end, like sure as she's dying, she's like feels like she's in a bed and whatnot, but we don't. It as someone who had no context, maybe someone who like already knew kind of about her character and knew about previous developments that are in the book, for example, I can see like kind of understanding that. But
I will say, honestly, I feel like it almost does still kind of work that way in the books. I feel like that's kind of a flaw, or like not in the book, because that one I don't know as well, but the movie, there's no resolution there either. Yeah. And if you think the wife Rachel or the mom doesn't get development in this, in the original movie, she's in it she's in it, but she's just kind of she's a wife. So they did for for fans, they did try to spruce up that role. But I think I agree with you that you don't. There's not too much more there. You get her checking on Lewis a lot, but there's just not much development going on. And the thing with because the big twist is what they changed is in the OG book and the movie, it's the boy that dies. And what happens is the same thing. They go out of town, and then right when they get back, the boy kills Rachel, and there's not much of a moment between Lewis and her. And what happens is Lewis kills Gage and he kills Church, but then he decides that he's going to put his wife in the hole because he goes, well, she hasn't been dead that long. So of course, that's one thing where I'm kind of transitioning to is what I did love about the book.
Does Ellie fit in at all in the original? Or
yeah, she's there. So she is reversed, and what happens is same thing that Pascal. It's the exact same thing where Pascal's talking to Ellie, kind of like whatever telepathically or some way throughout. I don't know, Stephen King magic. And same thing, Rachel has a bad idea, so she decides she leaves Ellie in Chicago with the grandparents, so she never comes. Gage dies, the cat dies, and then she dies from Gage. But then that's what I love about the original is it's just this kind of, it is insanity because he decides that's why he buries her. Like, well, she hasn't been dead that long. And it's just this, you can see this man's completely lost it, and no matter what's going to happen, he's just going to keep trying and trying and trying. Where this, for me, and I know it's a weird pot to jump to, but it's kind of do with Rachel. The ending for me is very rushed of like, so you bring Ellie back, which I actually liked. I really liked that scene the first night when she's back, and you can tell she's a little off, but she's still acting kind of like
I thought that was well done.
And that was and I like the way like she asked him to sleep beside him, and you can tell like he wants to, but he's very
you can see like the realization of what he did.
Like, and he doesn't know how this is gonna pan out.
He's just like, maybe this wasn't a good idea.
Yeah, and then the next morning she's like dancing, and it's like all normal, and then she starts acting violent and stuff. She starts smashing up, and then for some reason she just like sees Judd's place, and she's like, I'm gonna go kill him. And that's the one thing that I think works better when it was like the little kid, because it's just like, well, it's just this little kid. You don't know why, but this girl, she's talking and emoting a lot. But the thing is, so they go through all this, and I'm jumping to the end where Rachel gets there. So that's like a new wrinkle where her having to deal with, oh, my daughter's back and a child. But not much is brought in that. It's just kind of Elle's a monster and chasing. And I just feel it happens so quick where she kills Rachel and she buries Rachel and Rachel comes back alive and then Rachel kills her husband. That just happens so quick, especially when I feel like the movie establishes that it takes a little while for them to come back. And at the end, it was just like going and going and going. And that really bugged me. It just felt like it felt like if you were a play and they're like, you guys are over time, you need to wrap it up. But this is a movie, you know?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
The ending to me, like I said, after that Elle stuff, kind of fell apart with everything with Rachel and Lewis, and that was kind of disappointing for me.
I think there was no the way they jumped from her being like kind of weird about it, but still like a little off, but still being like regular Ellie.
Like there could be a chance, yeah.
And then all of a sudden I think the thing that really got me the most was that all of a sudden she wants to kill her mom, and it's like there was no build up to that like beforehand. It wasn't like, oh, like she has a very strained relationship with her mom like while she was alive, and then maybe because she's dead, she's a little weird. The way she processes things isn't quite normal, and so like she ends up coming to that conclusion that she has to kill her mom. But then all of a sudden she's just like she wants to kill her mom because her mom was acting weird when she came back.
Yeah.
And then she goes and kills Judd, and then it's just like it really just falls apart. And then also the whole time she seems like she wants to be back with her dad, but then she wants to go kill her dad.
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's kind of messy. The ending really bugged me, and you know, like the last thing was like the whole family's dead and they're going after the kid. But that's the thing; it didn't leave anything with me, and that's where for me I've always loved Pet Sematary, because it was like I think my first, I sent this to Briggs when I saw Pet Sematary, it was probably the first thing when I was younger that I like a child died. So for me that was really big, and I was always like the idea of, you know, especially myself who's a parent now, it's like the idea of losing a child in such like a grotesque way. And it is that I like, and that's the other thing that I'm, you know, I hate to compare it, but the original, it doesn't build up as well, or it doesn't build up tremendously, but it still to me is there's like a little wiggle room in, you know, when he loses his child and then to make that decision, it feels very quick of loses child, ships family off, and is right to there, and then he puts Elle on the ground, and I feel like that again happens at such a warp speed. To me, it's just like I wish there was some play on, you know, like you want your child back, but this is something you can't come back from, you know. And I think they touch upon that in moments, but you don't. To me, they don't give that room to breathe, because it is that thing of like, you know, obviously I've seen Pet Sematary, but I wouldn't do this. But if you've lost a child and you know you could bring them back, but there's this risk of things going terrible, what do you do? And I feel like that's not anything. It's just I'm doing this, you know, because even in the original, him and Judd talk about it, and what happens is Judd tells him about this guy, that Tommy, that was buried there, and how it went terribly wrong. And it felt like, for me in the original, that there was this conversation of Lewis kind of deciding if he was going to do it, and him and Judd are talking about, where this is right when he goes to Judd's, he's made his decision, right? He has that like knockout whatever, like, and that's the thing where there was no, and I knew the movie was going to go that way, but I wish there was a bit more like struggle from his part, especially because I think Jason Clarke does a good job acting in this. But
it seems like I think I do think he did a really good job leading. But I think the way they just jumped from the way his character went from like seemed like a really like genuine nice guy, he wants the best for his kids and his family, and like you can see like he very firmly doesn't believe in like the afterlife at the start, and they set him up like that really
and not
heavily.
Talked about after the Pet Sematary, like once even Church comes back, there's never that moral talk of
and I think and the thing is like he immediately also with Judd, like as soon as Judd goes over the bear, like he just follows him. He just straight up follows him, no questions or anything.
Well, and that's the problem with them not being friendly, right? Because if they're just an acquaintance of this guy, and like his Judge just like, you just gotta follow me, I know a place. And like, why are we going there? And Judge just kind of smiles, and it's like, why would I follow you? Like, and if you're a friend, then fine. But this guy, you just met him,
and even like Judd doesn't even do anything like. He doesn't do anything, and like he's not reassuring. He's not creepy about it or anything. Like there's no emotion. It's very flat the way he does it. He's just like, do you love Ellie? Does Church love Ellie? Okay. And there's no nuance to it. There's no like him giving like a big speech about some like about like trying to convince him of the afterlife or something. He just starts walking away, and Lewis is just like, okay, follows, and then. Yeah, and then when Church comes back, he just sort of accepts it immediately. Sure, there's like the little scene of him doing a bit of research, but he doesn't like have some conversation with Judd about like what the heck's going on. And
he does just that one time when he's like, "What do we do up there?" But they don't. It's not an in depth. He's just like, "Oh, we buried your cat," you know.
For someone who you set up to be like the complete opposite of what's going on, like he's supposed to be like completely against this.
Yeah, he's like there's no God, stuff like that, which is not really. And that one I don't know. Book readers have to tell me because I can't remember. But in original, it's not really that. He's just a doctor, and so to me that was strange that when they introduced that in this movie, I was like, okay, I like this. It's kind of like that morality play of questioning your faith and belief of the afterlife. And he does, but then when the time he should start questioning it, they just drop that storyline.
There's no there's no internal conflict for his character, which was. it was tough,
Mhm.
and it's not like it just kind of like jumped to him being feeling a different way,
Yeah.
and then yeah, and then all of a sudden you see him kind of like he just kind of jumps to being like kind of like cruel, and he's not really thinking about, he's being very selfless, and like you can see the way he like goes over to Judd's place to knock him out so he can go do the grave robbing. He like, you can see like he's a changed man, but you don't see him change into that man.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Where would you want to go next? Because I think I've hit a lot of my notes. The only thing I'd say, and this is a negative thing, I hate to say this, but I feel like we're in this like kind of golden age of child actors. I don't think the girl that played Elle was the greatest. I think she has to do a lot, so I don't blame her. At such a young age, you got to play like this nice girl, and then I think she was good when she first came back that night of being kind of in the middle creepy, but then as that went along, I think with some of the dialogue they gave her as evil L2 was kind of cheesy and whatnot. And there's just some effects things I didn't like. At one point when he was choking her, they like had her like hitting him, but then they also like sped up to kind of make her like classic like possession. Yeah. It didn't work for me. That's when it kind of slipped into like kind of more the B kind of scare horror stuff. So I thought she was fine, but it was stuff where it felt that was reminding me of, oh, this is a kid actor. Where I feel like lately we've had like Logan and It and Stranger Things where these kids have been killing it, and it's just like, oh, I'm just watching this. But with this, lots of times to me felt like, oh, I'm watching a kid actor.
Yeah.
Not her fault. I don't blame her. She's young. She's trying. But to me, that was kind of a crux where I didn't buy in all the time because it felt like she was trying to act. So that's kind of my last big point.
Yeah, it's definitely a risk going with child actors, and I know like it's a big thing these days. It's really, there's been quite enough hits that people are wanting to try it. But I think I do think I pretty much the same thing you said. I think she just didn't really know how to play that kind of possessed horror, like more of a horror for like a horror role trying to actually scare people.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, yeah, she's young. You can't really blame her for that. But I think just even if they had just like given her less of less pressure on her, and just like even like I like what they did with the masks, how at the end she put it on. I think overall the whole mask sort of child animal possession, I think it felt kind of, I mean obviously it's necessary for the name of the movie and having a pet cemetery, but I feel like they didn't touch on it enough to make it seem like and I don't know how important it is earlier in the other iterations of it, but it felt like they set it up as being like this big thing where like it's really nothing, it's like this really creepy like big thing that kind of goes on, but then it's just like, nope, it's just this thing that's completely normal. And then
everyone does it here.
It's like other things around it that are actually really weird. So but I do think like it was pretty, like when she had that mask on, she was killing Judd. I thought that was fine. I thought like that was pretty scary when she had the mask on, but then she took it off and didn't put it on for the rest of the film. And I think if she had kept it on and there was less reliance on her acting to scare people, and she was more silent, maybe she just had one or two lines, and then it was just like them kind of like freaking out about like not really understanding why she's doing things because she doesn't say why she's doing things. Then I think it could have been had a bit more of an impact. But yeah,
no,
like
I
at
agree
the end
with
it
you.
just kind of fell flat.
Yeah, and I have to mention, I do not like Judd's death. The build-up was fine, but she says some line like, I'm going to kill you, and then he's like, fucking try it, little girl. And it's just like, it felt very strange.
Yeah, he like, all of a sudden he's like the
spiteful, like, I don't know, like
spiteful tough guy or something, and then he just dies anyways, and it's like, oh, okay.
It was that, he was all over the map. Where would you want to go next, or any point you want to talk about?
I think I've covered pretty much everything that I had to say about the film. So
I'm gonna give this a 5 out of 10. It's a pass for me. I enjoyed. I think, like I said, the first act, maybe first to middle, and then I think it kind of takes a big drop. Not a big enough drop. Like I said, it's one of the worst movies. I probably will. I'll watch it again because my significant other wants to watch it. But I don't think there's much for me that I want to revisit. I think performances are good. Like I said, score was good, but it's it was generic a lot of time of just like pianos or like that, like just like like creepy stuff. But there's sometimes they had like this chanting going on, and I should have wrote it down specifically. But there's one scene I think it's they use it a few more times, but specifically when Lewis finds Judd's body, it just kind of feels like it's those little kids that were doing the burial, like kind of they would be chanting, and that I really like. So I wish there was more of that. And there's some cinematography that was good when I can't remember when it was, but someone was being buried because lots of people get buried in this. It was just like they followed this tree like all the way up, and then it went up and like bird's eye view and kind of panned over. I thought there was some really cool shots. Yeah. So I like I said, it's a movie that has merit. As an Easter egg, I wanted to shout out too is there's one moment when Rachel's stuck in traffic. It says Derry like 5 miles away, so that's really cool.
What is that?
That's a town in It where all the kids live. So that's cool. Just a nice little Easter egg. So a 5 out of 10 for me. It's a pass. Not enough to fail, but it's nothing. Not even a 6. Even a 6 to me. Like to me, this is just average. It just passes just because of a few good things, but lots of times it kind of becomes a little generic horror, which is disappointing because I feel like the beginning of the movie is not that. I feel like it sets it up to be something, like I said, something kind of more special, something more like a kind of Hereditary type, something like The Witch, something even like what a Get Out or Us was trying to do, and it didn't really. It just kind of went into the average kind of tropes. So 5 out of 10, it's a pass for me, but it's just a pass, just that C-.
I think like for me overall, the biggest issue is that just a lack of development, both in like. Just overall the whole film, it really felt like we were just being like the characters and we were just kind of being pushed along, and no one actually had any choice in what happened, or there's no this wasn't happening to them because they're hubris, or they didn't do anything wrong that's coming back to haunt them. It's just it just happens to them, and there's nothing they could have done about it or anything. It's just a series of like, oh well, this sucks for that family. I
series
guess.
of unfortunate events.
Yeah, and so for that, it really was difficult to connect with, just like the idea of the movie or just the characters in general. I had a really tough time with that. And again, also they just opened too many doors that they didn't really resolve. One being like Rachel and Zelda and their relationship. That was it was there and it was shown, but it didn't really have any impact on the film as a whole. Also the children procession thing, they kind of hinted at it, and I think that's like that imagery is fairly consistent in the material in general. It's just like it's kind of focused on, but then they didn't really do much with that either. They have like the whole life and death thing, but then there's no development with that. Lewis just kind of goes along with everything, and it feels like there's so many like interesting ideas that they could play around with, but then there's like, this was an idea, something in the source material that maybe got developed further, but we don't have time to go into it at all any further. So I think overall it was just hard for me to get really invested in the film, and it just fell short as far as even just being a scary movie was. So I'm with you on this one. I'm going to do a 5 out of 10 as well.
Well, there you go. That was our review of Pet Sematary. I think next week Taylor will be possibly reviewing Hellboy. I may or may not be on that with him. We'll see. That's a tough sell, but we'll see. And then after that is episode 9 trailers drop in. Yeah. And that weekend we're doing a bunch of casts. Me and Taylor are also doing a cast on the Sunday because Mandalorian trailer's dropping, the trailer for the new video game's dropping, and then we're going to do a stream. And Briggs, you're welcome to join us. That's Any Geeks Are. We're doing a stream on Sunday of just Star Wars games. So we're just playing a bunch of those. So you can tune on Facebook. And then after that, it's casts here and there, but it's Endgame is coming up, and we got some good stuff coming. So just go to the description down below, and if you want to watch on video or listen on audio, all the links are there. So please subscribe, like, review, rate, all that good stuff. And Briggs, you have anything to say before we go?
Yeah, once again, we said at the start, but leave a review. Let us know how you feel about anything, basically. Especially let us know how you feel about the audio quality with these new mics
nice
that we have.
Crisp, yeah.
We are enjoying them very much so, but we want to make sure that you are also enjoying them. So let us know. Give us a thumbs up, or if we need to adjust anything. If someone's way louder than anyone else, maybe we're not aware of it, give us a shout out, and we will be sure to get on it.
And if you ever hear an episode with kind of the older quality, that's two things. One, there's either a malfunction, but if there was, I or anybody recording would tell you up front, be like, oh, there's something wrong with the mic, so it's this.
Yeah.
But there is some stuff that was pre-recorded, like me and Taylor did Clone Wars, stuff like that. When those Hobbit retros dropped, those were pre-recorded. So there's still some casts that will build audio, but those all will have a disclaimer of, hey, that was months ago before you guys support us. And Patreon, that's a big thing. You can go there, Clone Wars, Hobbit retros on there. Lord of the Rings retro will be starting up again once Dylan's back. X-Men retro starting, so there's lots of good bang for your buck there. So until you hear from us next time, it'll not be boring.
Later, nerds.